Changing the subject can be also a part of being disruptive, and um, when you don't want to hear something, or you are skipping a lesson plan because it is either hard to process. And this type of situation is based on either the person who is otherwise very, very rude or very disrespectful. But in this directive, it is based on the reasons and why the person does it. Because when the person does that, it just sets up a situation where it causes anger and frustration, because then they are obviously changing the subject because they really don't want to hear what you are saying, or vice versa. And it is what would be considered, whether it is by default or whether it is by skipping whatever it is that is considered important to you, but not actually important to the other person. But when the other person does it through being disruptive because they want their idea to be important, or vice versa, there are so many variables to it. And in many terms, changing the subject can also be deemed very rude, very disrespectful, and otherwise considering the value of the opinion itself in contrast. But the reasons behind it can be all sorts of reasons. So many that we don't even know why the person is doing it and what the person's real motivation is. Because according to this, we continuously try to generalize why the person has done it, and why are they considering that their opinion is more important, or maybe it is considered that there is a value upon their opinion over your opinion, or vice versa. But it can also be that it could be based on a judgment or a prejudice, or based on a whole bunch of stuff that they would consider that factor. But in many of the cases, changing the subject can be simply because the person is finding that the subject may not be easy to process or easy to understand. And this can be really a real tough subject, because in so many of the terms, we don't know why the person would do it, or why they would drift off the subject, or why they would do that. But there are a lot of questions within a person, and why they would do certain things, and why they would drift off the subject. It could be based on their education. It could be based on many factors of their past. It could be considered all the other things that go with it. We do not know, because it is hard to tell with people and why they do certain things, and the who, what, where, and when they have decided to either consider the other person's subject as being something that you throw in the trash or you throw in the garbage. Or you decide to disregard it because it is either hard, or the subject is not the best subject, or it's considered protracted or vice versa. But there's a whole bunch of variables concerning this that we do not understand, nor we can even consider why it is the science behind changing the subject. We don't know. We could be, but it can be also considered very, very rude and very, very otherwise disrespectful and counterproductive as well. And what it is it sounds more leaning towards it being rude and disrespectful and presumptuous to say plenty of why a person would go that far to do that. And we don't know. We don't know whether it's acerbic remarks or vice versa, or considering the real lack of understanding, or vice versa. But the science behind it, according to what I'm saying, is very extensive. Even within this lesson and within the real fact behind why the person would do that, because it could date back to the education that they had, or it could date back to in school that they kept disrupting the teacher or disrupting the educator numerous times, because they found that dealing with teachers is very hard too, and dealing with educators is very, very hard for some people. And dealing with any type of subjects is very hard to process or deal with on a scientific level, which is what I'm stating here concerning the facts under changing the subject. And maybe it is something that nobody wants to hear, or people are bored of hearing it, or they find that it would be more considered if they are considered, but it can also be considered deemed rude and presumptuous and disrespectful and just all around, all of those things at the same time.